I remember seeing yours. That you get. Yeah, I know there were a couple of you that did. So please make sure that you, it takes like 2 seconds. Like you fill in your name, you look at your book number. But just make sure you do that so I have a tally of the books. The number that you take. Still pretty new, so I think they're 110 bucks maybe. You don't want to lose it. It's like the price of a college book. Good times. All right, so lines in a plane. Just a fancy way of just saying the regular little lines, but throw in that little plane to get you to think about geometry a little bit. We have the slope of a line. So without giving me the formula, how would you describe the slope of a line? Chelsea?
The way a line moves.
Yeah, that's perfect. So the movement of a line would be slope. Again, without giving me a formula, we usually think of it as something over something, Michael. Yeah, rise over run. So slope is the m variable. Usually we think of it as rise over run. Which is, how does the line move? How does it rise? How does it run? Or does it fall and move backwards? All right, so who got this question correct then? What is the slope of a line as its formula? Chelsea, did you get it?
y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1.
Now, if you have it y1 minus y2, x1 minus x2, that's fine, that's the same thing, as long as the numbers are going the same way. So if you're using x1, y1 first, or x2, y2 first. But it's rise over run, which is why the y is on the top, because the y is your rise value. The x is how far you're going left or right. Okay, so that was question number 2. Question number 1 asked for the 4 cases of slope, or the 4 situations that exist for slope, the 4 different lines that really exist. So if lines are moving, it's the movement of a line. Can anybody give me an example of a line? Virginia? A horizontal line. So if it's a horizontal line, Virginia, what's the slope of a horizontal line?
0.
Yes, so that would be 1 case for slope. The horizontal line, the slope is 0. So this gives us a horizontal line. So that would be one option. Got a flat horizontal line. Jenna, do you have another option?
Undefined.
Yeah, so if the slope is undefined, Jenna, what kind of line is that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's our vertical line. Okay, 2 other options. What else do we have? So we have a line that's horizontal, we got a line that's vertical. Any other kind of lines? Yours? Positive, yeah. So if the slope is positive, we say mathematically that means it's bigger than 0, but you can think of it as being positive. What kind of line would you have then, Eris? How does the line move if it's positive? Left to right. What happens from left to right? Yeah, it goes up. So it goes up, it increases. So all lines move from left to right. All curves move from left to right. So in this case, if the slope's positive, the line increases, goes up from left to right. And then, Asia, the last option would be negative, yeah. So when it's less than 0, we have a negative slope. And what kind of line would that be then, Asia?
Decreases.
Yeah. So it decreases from left to right. So those are the 4 situations for slope, cases for slope, options for slope. I don't know, maybe the word cases isn't a good word. Questions? How are we doing those? Anybody get 2 and 4? Yeah, good. Okay. I think the other thing underneath here before we look at a problem is slope-intercept form. Libby, what's slope-intercept form?
Y equals mx plus y.
Yeah. I think that's probably the most commonly used form to graph a line, to use an equation or like create an equation in that form, slope-intercept form. This is the one everybody thinks of when you think of a line, y equals mx plus b. So the slope is the m. As Chelsea said, it's the movement of the line. M means movement. Y-intercept is b. You begin with b when you're graphing. So it begins, connects, crosses over the y-axis. So our first little example here, application problem. 2006, Research in Motion's net profits were $631.6 million. In 2007, their net profits were $1,293.9 million. It wants us to write a linear model, which is another way of saying writing a linear equation, except since it's application, we use a model, to give the net sales in the terms of years, So if we're trying to write a model or an equation, what do we need to know or to find in order to write that? Chelsea?
The slope.
Yeah, we need to find slope. So one thing is to find slope. What else do we need to find? We're trying to write a model or an equation, a linear model or equation. Anything else important besides slope? How about the y-intercept? It's probably important too. So we'll need slope and we need y-intercept. How do we go about finding the slope when you have a word problem? So we talked about the slope formula. How do we use this information with slope, Chelsea?
You could do 1,293.9 million minus 631.6 million over 2007 minus 2006.
Okay, so she's kind of taking the information and treating them as ordered pairs, plugging them into the slope formula. Instead of using 2006, Chelsea, because that's a year, what number could we use to represent 2006?
You could just use 0.
You could just use 0, you could use 1. Like, we usually use a number to represent the year instead of plugging in that year into the equation. So since it's the first year they give us, you can use 0. You could use a 6 if you wanted to, because you're thinking maybe it starts in 2000 instead of 2006. But I mean, the first year they give you, you can create that as 1, treat that as 1, and then 2007 we would treat it as, 0 for 2006, 1 for 2007. And Chelsea did give me the formula. I just want to, for you to be able to see that really we're connecting this information into a set of ordered pairs. That's really what you're doing. So you're taking the pieces of information they're giving you, connecting them together as points, ordered pairs, and then finding the formula for slope. So she said 12,293.9 minus the 631.6. And that's really just over 1 minus 0 for 1. So what is the slope of our line? Michael, what'd you get?
I got 662.3.
Perfect. So that's slope. What's the y-intercept? Think about it. What's the y-intercept? Chelsea?
631.
Why?
Because that's the first year.
Yeah, that's the first year it started. So that's our initial year. That's year 0. Therefore, this is the y-intercept. You don't have to calculate anything if they give you the beginning value there's no calculations necessary. So y equals the slope m, x, and then plus our y-intercept. So the slope is the amount they're gaining, earning every year. And then we have the y-intercept value. So part B, Libby, it says use the equation to estimate the net sales in 2010. What would you do there?
You would put in 10 or would be 4 for X.
Right. So because we said that 2006 was 0, 2010 is 4 years later, so we're using this equation here, plugging a 4 in for X. Kate, what'd you get for Y?
I got 3,280.8.
80.8. We have to label our value anyway special? Say again?
Million.
Millions, yeah. Because this is in millions of dollars. So they're not just making $3,280.8. Probably isn't a very good profit for a company. Instead, we're making $3,280.8 millions of dollars. Better profit for a company. It's a pretty nice profit. I'd like to own that company. Probably a lot of stress involved with that though. Has to be. I have a stress-free job, right? Nothing to stress about. Alright, 3 other terms that we're going to look at on the bottom of this page quickly here. We have general form, and then the way that we would write a vertical line versus the way we'd write an equation of a horizontal line. So think back in your memory banks. General form. Slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. What's general form look like? Not y equals mx plus b. Virginia, what do you think? Ax plus b of a y plus c equals a big fat 0. So we'll talk about equations having general versus standard form. So general form is usually when the equation is equal to 0, and then we'll also look at standard form when it's kind of rearranged a little differently. So a line can have slope-intercept form. It can also have point-slope form, which we talked a little bit about last year. But general form we use to get x and y intercepts pretty easily because you're just kind of plugging a 0 in for x or y. So that form we use for the x and the y intercepts pretty quickly. A vertical line is a line that goes up and down. We said the slope is undefined. The equation of a vertical line is in x equals form. So x equals a is the equation of a vertical line. Because it's going through a point on your x-axis. And it connects through that point and it just continues moving up. So a vertical line is x equals, because you're moving over to an x value and then just going up and down at that x value. A horizontal line has a slope of 0. I'm just going to use a b instead of an a, kind of a different variable. So that means horizontally you're moving up somewhere on the y-axis and then drawing a line. That connects at the point 0, comma b, because it would be a y-intercept. So that's the y-intercept that creates just your horizontal line. Any questions? 2 more vocab terms on the back. Little review of parallel versus perpendicular. And I'll do one other quick example. So parallel lines . Parallel lines have the same slope, yeah. Now, their y-intercepts are going to be different because if it wasn't, then it'd be the same line. But for them to be parallel, the slopes have to be the same. Sabrina, perpendicular lines have what? Yeah. So perpendicular lines have, she said reciprocals. Is there another word with that?
Negative.
Yeah. So we call that opposite reciprocal slopes. So they have to be opposites. One is positive, one's negative, and then they have to be reciprocals. Questions? All right, so one last little problem down below. Find the equation of a line that passes through the point 2, -1 and is parallel to 2x minus 3y equals 5. So the first thing we're going to do is get this in y equals form so that we can kind of compare slopes, because the slope has to be parallel or the slope has to be perpendicular. So take the 2x to the other side, divide by -3. Careful when you're dividing, your signs have to switch because it's negative. So Grace, what's the slope of my current line?
2/3.
What's the slope of our new line? If it's parallel. 2/3. So when you're trying to come up with a second equation, and it's supposed to be parallel, we're taking the original equation, change it to y equals. Use that slope. Slope is parallel, parallel means the same. And then we need to use the new point to come up with a different y-intercept. You're not using -5/3 because that goes to that line. So using slope-intercept form, -1 is y, slope is 2/3, x is 2. I'm just taking that ordered pair and plugging it in. Because we need to find b. Anybody know what -1 minus 4/3 is? Virginia? -7/3. So that equation would be 2/3 x minus 7/3. So these would be parallel because the slopes are the same. And then just to kind of start the last one, perpendicular, Sabrina said would be opposite reciprocal. So it would be -3/2. And then you do it exactly the same way. So my slope is now -3/2. I'm still using the point -1, +2. And that one I think is a +2. So writing equations of lines using the fact that slope is parallel, the same as the line they give you, or it's perpendicular, the opposite reciprocal of the line they give you, and then plugging in the ordered pair. Homework tonight, anybody interested in trying 67 or 86? Maybe you'll try 67, Eris 86? The solutions to the even problems are listed on the assignment sheet, which again is found on Remind on Google Classroom. All the odds are in the back of the book. So Eris, you're doing 86. And Libby, you've got the 67. Have an awesome day.